Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and I'm here to review Suburbicon. And when these trailers dropped, I was very excited to see this film because it was based off of a script by my favorite writers and directors, the Coen brothers, and directed by George Clooney. George Clooney is a bit hit or miss when it comes to actual direction. I'm a fan of Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, but then you also have Monuments Men, which is really boring, like really boring. And I was hoping for more Confessions of a Dangerous Mind for this film, but alas, that was not the case. And I also found out later that this was a script that the Coens never thought that they could make work, so why the heck did George Clooney think he could do it? Anyway, so I went to go see this film last weekend, and I really did not like this. There's very few redeeming qualities, and the costume design and how they actually set up the period was very well done and very engrossing, but honestly, the rest kind of just falls flat. And George Clooney is a director here. The story is a jumbled mess, and it really doesn't have a focus because it keeps getting distracted by trying to do these like racial tension scenes, which are completely distracting from the actual story in this. And it really doesn't dig deep enough to even warrant being in the film, except it just distracts from the actual story that we're supposed to be invested with, which that's never a good thing. And then the pacing of this film, it's so boring. It just has a snail's pace, and then by the end it thinks that it's being like really tense and things start happening really quickly, but like the amount of time might condense between like major events, but like the actual playing out of these events feels so sluggish and drawn out, and it's just like, what are you doing? And the tone, this film is so tone deaf, and it's just like, what the heck is this supposed to be? And a lot of Coen Brothers films are black comedies, they're really dark comedies, and everything in this film felt like it was being played straight. Why? And a lot of those really dark, awkward deaths that pop up in Coen Brothers film were played straight here, and it's just like, what are we supposed to be doing here? And it felt all over the place, and I wasn't emotionally invested in anyone. Actually, most of the people in this film were completely despicable, and it's just like, by the end, it's like, why do I care about any of them? Except for this little kid. And this black family gets harassed the whole entire time. But you really don't get to know the family. You only hear the stereotypes that everybody else has against them, and then everyone acting like a bunch of monsters to them. And it's like, I'm not going to get enough of a connection, and this young kid whose family is a complete hot mess, it's just like, that's why I care about him. He's a good kid, stuck in a really bad situation, that's about it. And then you do have cinematography done by Robert Elswit, and the cinematography is really well done in this film, and you can tell that he has a very good handle on the camera work and the framing, and there's sequences and shots in this film that do really stick out as something like there was some inspired work in this film, which also makes it really frustrating because there's so much talent going into this film. How did this become such a hot mess? Going into the film, I knew it had terrible reviews. I was just really curious on how this film can be this bad, and it was. And I'm like, well, there goes my hour and 40 minutes watching this film, which this film felt like I was there for 2.5 hours and was really bad, but at least the cinematography was good, right? Now, the writers. So you can tell there is a Coen Brothers script in here, and then George Clooney and his producing partner, Grant Heslov, wrote over it, and this story is a hot mess. It's all over the place. There's no clear central piece to this film, and especially from the marketing campaign, it's like you expect Matt Damon to be like the big part of this film, and this film's about him. It's really not. It's about his son, and the kid's the only character that's even a tiny bit interesting, because everyone else is so flat and also despicable at the same time. There's one character besides the kid that sticks out in this film, and honestly, it's because of the performance, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but also the dialogue. Dialogue really wasn't impressive how it was written. Like, I feel like with a different handle on this film could have been so much better, but all the dialogue came off being overly serious and didn't work, and that's really from the directing because the Coen brothers know how to make a sharp, biting script, and even they didn't want to touch this film. So this is just overall like a big question mark to me about this film, and it tries to tackle racial issues and really doesn't do a good job of even handling that at all. The only interesting storytelling device in this film, honestly, and what made it a little unique was at the beginning where the whole exposition was played out in pamphlet form and you hearing about Suburbicon. And I'm like, this was actually pretty cool. And then you get started and it's just like, well, that was probably the best part of the movie. And then one other scene, because, and now we're going to get into the acting and talking about the actors in this film. Oscar Isaac is in like 2 scenes and he's fantastic. He's so entertaining. He has so much energy. He's the only one who's really bringing energy to this film, and I think that's really disappointing because there's so much talent in this film. Julianne Moore and Matt Damon feel like they're kind of just like slogging through this film, and it's like, why are you even here? And then I have to give Noah Jupe, the young boy, some credit because he was believable and he brought an emotional core to this film, and that's basically only a couple of pieces of this film kind of worked. And then you have the music, Alexander Desplat's music, and I love it, Alexander Desplat, and his music in this was fantastic. I really loved the music in this film, and it elevated what it could. Honestly, the rest of the film kind of fell below. This is basically, and now to wrap up my thoughts on this film, this is basically, let's get as much talent as possible, load it in a cannon, and shoot it in the middle of nowhere, and it hits nothing, basically. And that's a really big shame for Suburbicon because of the cinematography, because of the music, because of Oscar Isaac and Noah Jupe. I am not going to give this an F, but I'm going to give Suburbicon a D.